Hi, it's Dwight Lemke again. You'll recall that when we last spoke, I mentioned that sometimes people confuse negotiation and haggling. Well, we're going to try to clarify things a bit for you here. Haggling itself, that is the iterative give and take that goes across the negotiating table, is a necessary part of all negotiations. That is because what we're trying to do here is come up with an agreement that's mutually acceptable to both sides, but that resides within our ZOPA, another word for another four-letter acronym. In this case, ZOPA stands for Zone of Possible Agreements, which is the area in which an agreement can take place where we both nod our heads and walk away. So, in order to be able to claim value in negotiations, we have to do some actual haggling. And that starts with some basic steps. First of all, we assess our BAT. Now we sit down, we identify our plausible alternative options, we estimate the value associated with those, and then we select the best of those options there, which gives us our BAT, our best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Once we've done that, we need to look at our reservation value, another term for you. The reservation value is our indifference point. At what point do we say, okay, that's good enough? That's our reservation value. Once we've done that, now we need to sit down and figure out what's happening on the other side of the table. It's not good enough just for us to know what we're up to. We need to try to figure out what they're up to. So you have to assess a BATNA for the other side of the table as well. From that, you calculate their reservation value. There's a lot of guesstimates going on here, but it's this is hard work that will pay for you. Will pay off in the end. So that finally, it gives us our ZOPA, our Zone of Possible Agreement. If we have each party's reservation value, the Zone of Possible Agreement is all possible details, all possible deals, I should say, that are between those two reservation values. We go, oh, sure, fine, now we can walk away. We're happy. It's the space between the seller's reservation value and the buyer's reservation value. Once we've determined all of this, as I said, but you never sit down at the table without doing your homework. Now we have time to start, thinking about some strategies. For example, do you make the first offer? There's some pluses and minuses there, but I need to bring to your attention the reason that you might or might not make a first offer. A first offer serves as an anchor. That's a psychological anchor. Keep that in mind. And what it does is it's a number that focuses people's attention. If you go into a used car lot and they say, I'll take 15 grand for that. Well, now we're going to negotiate around that 15 grand. If you'd come in and says, I'll offer 10 for that, well, now that's a different set of values. We're going to go upwards from there rather than downwards from 15. And our ZOPA might be different. So do you want to put that anchor in people's heads, or do you want to let them put one in your head? Research has shown that anchors even affect those with negotiation experience and expertise. Why do you think there's an RRP on that big 42-inch plasma TV when you go down to Harvey Norman's? Because it sets a reservation value. You don't mean that you're one of those people who doesn't negotiate for appliances, are you? Good thing you're in the class. But that RRP, that's exactly why that's there. When you're looking at car advertisements, when you see house prices advertised in a newspaper. Well, our last house in this neighborhood went for $330,000. They're setting an anchor. And whether you like it or not, the minute that figure comes out of their mouth, you now have a figure that you negotiate around. Unless you're willing to say, I didn't hear that. I'm pretending that that never happened. So my counteroffer is let's ignore their anchor and try to set one of our own. Now, what we're trying to look at here is not only using the negotiation to come to a successful agreement, but to engage in some sleuthing, if you will. The Harvard negotiation folks talked about the idea of investigative negotiation. That is, unless we've hired some really good private investigators, we don't know 100% of what they know on the other side of the table. But we'd kind of like to get close to 100% because it gives us a lot more room to negotiate. Pretty simple kind of idea. It helps us to narrow down our ZOPA and to truly get a fix on what their reservation value is. So, we need to engage in some investigative negotiation. Very seldom can you sit down at a table and you look at the other party and say, well, tell me what you need. You're going to hear a lot of silence. You might hear a few guffaws, and they might just get up and walk over to the table and go, you're just not worth spending time with. So how do we figure that out? Well, we do our homework. I mean, that's the big one. We do the digging in the literature. We use the net for a good reason for a change. You Google a company, you Google news stories about it. You go into the various databases and try to look at news reports. You read their annual reports. You do everything that you possibly can to figure out what's going on. But that's not going to give you enough information. So we need to engage in investigative negotiation. First principle, don't ask what, ask why. Why is it that you need this easement? Not what do you want, why do you want it? Because that gets us closer to their true motives, and it gives us an idea of what their interests are as opposed to what their position is. Seek to reconcile our interests and not our demands, principle 2. We're trying to look at what we need, not what we want. Those are entirely different things sometimes. Create common ground with uncommon allies. The idea here is that value creating opportunities can emerge even between competitors who abhor each other. I want you to think about what you read in the news lately about some companies like Apple and Samsung that spend a lot of time suing each other. Hopefully you're also aware that they have several joint ventures going. So how do they manage that? Well, now and then your joint interests just overwhelm your differences. Brandenburger and Nailbuff coined the term co-opetition to describe the mixed motives. But you'll find this in a number of industries where companies are competitors in one realm and in another they're cooperating. Why? Because they have to. They're grown-ups. They don't hold grudges unless they absolutely have to. And you get on with life. Principle number 4. Interpret demands as opportunities. I demand that you give us this. Well, okay. Let's cut a deal. That's why we're sitting down here, right? So how you don't want to take the defensive posture, well, how can I avoid doing this? Say, okay, what's it going to cost? If you really truly want it, you really truly need this, let's see what we can come up with here. Let's put some things on the table. Principle number 5, don't just brush anything off as being their problem and not yours. Remember, we're at the table, we're trying to increase the size of the pie, therefore solving your problem is solving our problem, right? Principle number 6, don't let negotiations end with a rejection of your offer. The hell does that mean? What, we're just not going to take no for an answer? Well, not necessarily. Negotiations should never end with a no. Instead, they should answer with a yes or an explanation as to why not. A simple no doesn't give you any information. Well, why no? Why can't we cut a deal? What would I have to do to put the deal back on the table? Now we're gaining information. And finally, principle 7, understand the difference between selling and negotiation. What real estate agents and car salesmen do is not negotiating, they're selling. They want you to walk out of there with less money in your pocket. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to negotiate and create value. We're not trying to sell a pup to the people across the table. Why? They're going to find out it's a pup. That's the big one. They're going to find out it's a pup, and our relationship has now been damaged because we sold it to them. That's not good in the long run. So, what if they don't want to talk? Well, some people just are naturally reticent. Others get too involved in the game playing and say that, well, information is power. Yeah, but information is only power if you use it. If you hoard it, it doesn't do anybody a damn bit of good. So, Let's engage in some log rolling. And strategy one, in order to gain some information, let's build some trust. Share some information. Tell them something they don't know. Something that's not going to harm you, of course, but something that they don't know. Show them that you can be trusted or that you trust them. Maybe they'll reciprocate. Ask questions. We don't often think of that. Well, let's ask questions of those folks across the table. How about the third one? Let's give them away some information. Let's just tell them something because. Something that's completely irrelevant, but they might be interested in. Once we begin sharing, it creates a reciprocal relationship. And reciprocity is the key to negotiation. Strategy 4, we're going to try to negotiate multiple issues simultaneously, which is closely related to strategy 5, which is to make multiple offers. You don't need to offer just one big offer. You can offer a bunch of little ones. Well, we've got, like a Chinese menu. We've got one from column A and one from column B and one from column C over here. You can take them all, you can take 2, you can take none. It's entirely up to you. And why do we do this? Because it gives us more information. They've accepted this one, but not this one. Why? We ask them why, we gain more information. So, we talked before about negotiating from a position of weakness. This is why it's important to learn your BATNA. Weakness normally results when the other side's BATNA is relatively strong and your BATNA is relatively weak. That, you need the deal more than they do. So what do? Well, it creates anxiety into us. Remember that first salary negotiation when you sat down and went, well, what can you pay me? Or what are you going to pay me? Pretty weak position to be in. But I've been in the other part of that box too, having multiple offers on the table. That's a feeling of real power. Think, well, the other guys are offering me X. Why can't you? But if you're feeling weak, there's some things you can do. You don't give up hope of claiming value. What you try to do is not let them know that you're weak. Make them think you're stronger than you are. Having a weak BATNA is not terribly problematic unless they know you have a weak BATNA. If they know, well, what we can try to do is leverage that weakness. With both parties have a weak BATNA, it means our ZOPA is fairly large. If they've got a strong and we got a weak one, it means our ZOPA is even larger. How about leveraging our distinct value proposition? We need to be the guy that can offer them something that they can't get anywhere else. And that improves our bargaining position. Strategy number 4, this one is going to strike you as funny. If your position is very weak, consider relinquishing what little power you do have. Okay, Your Honor, I throw myself on the mercy of the court. Not quite that weak, but what you're basically saying, we can't out-muscle them. We may want to stop flexing our own muscles and just say, can you help us out? You might lose some face, might actually lose some skin in this deal, but you might come out, with a reliable partner, someone who knows that you owe them, but also somebody that now has an interest in your success. And finally, you want to strategize on the basis of the entire portfolio. That is, you want to think about everything that we can do here. Well, we're weak here, but we're strong over here. Let's bring them both in. That's why we try to throw multiple issues on the table, to increase not only the number of options, to increase the size of the pie, but to increase our power at the table. Well, that's all I have for you today. Have fun, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Bye-bye.